Hello friends, it's Dave here from SaveDex, bringing you another edition of the SaveDex Podcast. Now, I've got a very special guest with me today to help me talk about our top 10 favourite games of all time. Now, me and him have differing tastes, and one particular taste that we differ on is our taste in sort of Resident Evil games, as I prefer the more sort of newer 4 and 5 ones where you have plenty of ammo, you can just blast zombies however you want, but he prefers the more old school survival horror aspects where you have very limited weapons and ammo, and I've always wondered why he prefers that style of game, and then I've only just realised it. He's a Spurs fan, so he wants as little Arsenal in his life as possible. Here's Glen from SwitchUp. Hello, Glen.
Yeah. How you doing? You all right? That's I think you just got it spot on. That's exactly why. There you go.
Cool. So, as I said, we are going to talk about our top 10 favourite games of all time in this podcast. But before we get started with that, let's do a bit of meet and greet. So, Glen, let us know a couple of games that you've been playing lately.
I've been playing mostly kind of small arcadey games, to be perfectly honest, over the last couple of weeks or so. The first of which is a game called Mr. Driller. Do you know Mr. Driller at all?
Oh, I've heard of that, yeah. Yeah,
so it's a series that's been about for a fair while, to be fair. And I bought the Switch version the other day, which is actually a remaster of a Gamecube game that never made it outside of Japan.
Oh, nice.
So that's, it's a decent little puzzler when you have to drill down into the ground and try to avoid being squashed by the bricks as you kind of take away the foundations, and it's got a few different game modes. It's actually a fun puzzle game, kind of like very very loosely I guess, but things like Tetris or Puyo Puyo in terms of that block, well, not building as such, but like demolition, but a bit more action based. Fun, good game.
It's from the Dig Dug series, I see.
It was meant to be part of it, I believe, and then it kind of is loosely associated with it these days. Yeah. I think there's one of them on the NES app, if I remember, or something similar to it. I'm pretty sure Dig Dug is on it at the very least, if not Mr. Driller, yeah.
Yeah, something like that anyway. But yeah, that's pretty cool. Anything else?
What else have I been playing? Let me think. I have also... I'll tell you what I have been playing actually. Funnily enough, based on us having a chat the other day, not huge amounts, but I have just had a little dabble into Breath of the Wild recently.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, nothing like I say, nothing major, but just kind of doing your wandering around, as you do in that game, and a couple of shrines. It has given me the taste to go back into it again. I'm off on holiday soon. I think I might put a bit more time into it.
Yeah, are you going to go somewhere that has sort of countryside and stuff? Because I remember when the game first came out and Sophie and I got married and we honeymooned in Cornwall, and we went around the cliffs and stuff, and it was just making me think of Breath of the Wild. Yeah,
there are some kind of cliffs and whatnot as where we're going. So yeah, it'd be quite nice to take the Switch handheld and play it there. That'd be nice.
Yeah, it'd be cool. So for me, one game I played on Game Pass was called Escape Academy, which was an escape room game. You have sort of several, I think there was 10 escape rooms in it.
Oh, right,
and I've sort of talked back and forth about Game Pass before, where I sort of have a love-hate relationship with it. I love that, you have access to all these games, but at the same time I'm like, what's the point in beating them, because it's not me beating one of my games, But I think Escape Academy is the type of game that I think is good for Game Pass, because it's the kind of game that once you've beaten it, how much replay value is there, because you're going to know all the puzzles.
Yeah.
Have you ever done an escape room in real life, Glenn?
I have, actually, yeah. It was a couple of years ago now. Actually quite a unique experience. It wasn't what I expected at all. It reminded me of something like the Crystal Maze back in the day,
Yes, yeah. So I went on one on my stag do before, and I really enjoyed it. But I've been playing quite a lot of virtual escape rooms. There's plenty on the Switch that are always on sale.
Yeah.
And so me and Sophie Sophie helped me with a lot of these, and we actually managed to beat all of them without looking anything up online, which we were quite proud of. And we did use a few hints that the game can give you, but on that, the game does grade you on how well you did, and using hints knocks your score down. So it's not really, and also, and when you do a real escape room, like we had a walkie-talkie, so we could talk to the person in charge for a hint if we wanted. So it's all part of the experience. So that was a good one we played. And the other one is Amazon did a Prime Day recently, and I ordered the Lego Star Wars on Switch, and also the Disney collection, the one that has Jungle Book included.
Oh yeah.
So I was expecting 2 games in the post, but instead I got a big, huge box containing some noodle bowls and a multi-plug socket.
It's just bizarre. I mean, have you told the story on your channel before about the last time you ordered something from Amazon and ended up with something very random in return?
Yeah, I ordered the Plants vs Zombies game on the Switch, and I got a protractor, which was fun. But the thing about this box was, it had our address on it,
right?
But it also had another address for somewhere else. So Amazon obviously put both stickers on the same box instead of putting our one on my box. So I took it because it was Royal Mail that delivered it, and I work for Royal Mail, so I took it back to the office and said probably should go to that address because I didn't order that. And Amazon have refunded us, and the tracking thing have said, yeah, it's lost, so they gave us a full refund. And then I found in Tesco had the Lego Star Wars game at the same price and as their club card price, so I got it there. So I've been playing that a bit as well. So they're my 2 games I'll talk about. Nice,
yeah. I actually picked that one up myself recently. I haven't played it yet. In Smith's Toys, it was 100% impulse buy. I was in there with the kids, and my daughter was getting something with her pocket money, and just on the way to pay, and they had it on like the side, the end aisle on special offer for about £27, I think. And I thought, for that price, I'll pick it up.
Yeah, I've been waiting for it to go on sale, that one.
Yeah.
It's different to the other Lego Star Wars they made back in the day.
Right.
It's so they still the same stories, obviously, but like the cameras, like when you get your gun out, the camera sort of goes over your shoulder and things like that.
Oh, okay.
So it's a different experience. I remember playing as R2-D2 quite early on and beating up C-3PO. That was fun.
Yeah, you got to do it. It's got to be done.
Yeah. So those are some of the games we've been playing this week. So then I sort of usually go on to gaming news. It's been a while since I've done this podcast thing. So the only sort of gaming news I've got in mind at the minute is they did a partner showcase a few weeks ago, where everyone was expecting a proper direct, but then it was a good partner showcase. I thought we saw more than I thought we'd get, but then a week later they showed us a Bayonetta 3 trailer with release date, and also a new Kirby game got announced, and I was like, well, why didn't they just put them in that other direct and then call it a Nintendo Direct? I don't know. But what do you think of these? Because we got the Mario Rabbids game and Bayonetta 3 coming out like a week apart.
Yeah, when was the date for Bayonetta? When is it actually releasing?
It's like the 28th of October, I think.
October, right. Yeah, I mean,
it's just before Halloween.
It's nice to get a date for that, because you kind of have these games sometimes, don't you? These elusive, or these games that become quite elusive, such as Shin Megami Tensei 5, which went years with no news at all, and Bayonetta 3 was starting to possibly feel like one of those. So it's nice to get a proper date. In terms of it coming out, in close proximity to the Rabbids sequel, I mean, I don't think they're quite different games, aren't they? To be perfectly honest, they're both going to have their audience.
That's true. I mean, Bayonetta, it's kind of like makes sense to come out in October, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's quite a good release date for that one, to be fair.
Yeah, so did you see the Kirby trailer?
I did. I'll be honest, I haven't taken a huge amount of interest in it, but I did watch the trailer, and I saw a couple of videos online pop up about it. But I don't know a huge amount about it. Maybe you can fill me in now, Dave, to be honest.
Well, what's in that trailer is pretty much all we know.
Right, okay.
It's just a multiplayer, and people are comparing it to Fall Guys, and I sort of thought that as well at first. It's coming out in summer is what they're saying, which is weird to give that as a release window when we're in the summer, and games beyond the summer have solid release dates. But yeah, I imagine this is going to be sort of like an eShop game, sort of like priced in the teens or something, just a fun little multiplayer.
The reason that was one of the things I was going to ask you, because I thought maybe I'd missed it, but I had a feeling that it was potentially going to be a free-to-play game, because obviously Fall Guys is now.
Yeah, no, I think they've confirmed it's not free to play.
It's not free to play, okay, fair enough.
Yeah. Which hopefully that will mean that everything's included rather than microtransactions. So
yeah.
That's something.
Absolutely.
Cool. And I suppose the other big news is we're a few days away as we record this from Xenoblade Chronicles 3, which has been getting good reviews. Today they've been coming out.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't finished the second game. I did play and finish the first one back in the day, and by all accounts this one kind of ties those two games together.
Yeah.
So I'll need to play 2 before I even attempt 3, but it's nice that it's, again, nice that it's here. It's quite surprising that we've had two new Xenoblade games on the Switch, and obviously all 3 are actually on it. It's not often you get games that big come out so close together, Especially that this one's releasing like 5 months after its announcement as well. Yeah, it was a quick turnaround, wasn't it, in that respect?
Yeah. I mean, it was meant to come out in September as well. It's a game that's been pushed forward.
I seem to remember the second game, though, had a release date that had people doubting that it was going to make it, and it did, didn't it? That was quite
I actually felt very smug when they confirmed December for that game, that solid release date, because all year round I heard people going, there's no way that game's coming out this year. Absolutely no chance. I'm like, but we don't know how long it's been in development. We don't actually know anything,
Yeah.
Anyway, so those are sort of like the intro topics. So we'll move on to our main event, if you like. And that is, what are our top 10 favourite games of all time? Now, obviously this is just our opinions. You may not agree with our choices, and that's all fair enough. So put in your comments down below what your favourite games of all time are. And another rule I've put in, which I don't know if you stuck to this rule or not, but your list hasn't actually broken the rules. I've gone for 1 game per franchise just for the sake of variety.
Yeah, I did. If there was a case where I absolutely couldn't, I would have said to you, can you make an exception? But as it turned out, that it was fine. Yeah. Yeah,
so but when I sort of get to the games themselves, I will just say what the runners-up were, if need be. But there's not really much to say on that anyway. So basically, I came up with my list back when we were at uni, and I have made some changes to it since then, because obviously your perspective changes over time. Like, some games you might have loved, you might sort of, others memories and stuff might come more to the forefront for you.
Yeah.
And I will say right now, I mentioned this to you earlier, out of my 10 games, I think if I played them for the first time today, I think I would enjoy all of them, but none of them would make my top 10 favourite games if I played them for the first time as a 35-year-old. Nostalgia does play a huge part. The memories, like, you have stories to tell about your games and your experiences with them. They all play a huge part. So sometimes it's not the quality of the games themselves, but it's just your favourite, isn't it?
Yeah, I agree completely. There will be so many games that you could mention to me now that I'd go, actually, yeah, that's a great game. Yeah, that's, I really did like that game. But it's about when you played them as much as what you played for me. And for that reason, you'll see on my list that, there are very few, if any, actually, modern games, because it's those games that leave an impression on you and almost begin to shape you as a gamer in terms of your preferences. And that's definitely what my list does. So it's not to say there aren't better games than this out, and even games that I might have enjoyed more, but these are the games. If you said to me, like, quick, don't even think about it, 10 games, these are the 10 games that would come up.
Oh, cool, yeah. And it was so hard to narrow this down to just 10, which is why my list had changed several times. So I'll rattle off some honourable mentions sort of at the end as well, after we've gone through our list. So So Glenn, what is your number 10?
Right, my 10th best then is a game from back on the Commodore 64, which was one of the first computers that I ever played, or I owned, first being an Atari 2600, and it's Midnight Resistance. Now, I don't know if you know this one at all, Dave, do you?
I have never heard of this game. I'm looking it up as you're talking about it.
Okay, so it's a run and gun, basically, is I suppose how you'd describe it best. And you go through levels, obviously shooting as you go along, quite standard in that respect. But I'd never played anything like it at that time. I mean, I went on to play things like, Probotector as it was called over here, Contra as it's better known, on my cousin's NES. But at the time, Midnight Resistance was the first game of that type I'd ever played. And it was fantastic. It had a really interesting concept where as you went through levels, you collected keys. And then when you got to the end of a stage, you went into this room where there were different weapons that you could acquire with the keys that you'd collected through the stages, which is, I mean, I'm sure these days doesn't sound that revolutionary. But what was quite interesting is that at the end of the game, for the last level, the final stage, the keys that you collected actually unlocked the cabinets where your kidnapped family, which is the whole point of the game, were kept. So if you didn't get all the keys, you couldn't rescue all of your family members.
So you had to go for the good ending by getting them all. Exactly.
But there was quite a cheap part right near the end. It's like you had to go up a ladder, I seem to remember, and there was a helicopter that always used to shoot you, and if you got shot, you lost your keys. So you always lost them right near the end of the stage. So I tried that game so many times to try and get up to the top with all my keys.
Wow. So I'm looking at footage as we talk about this. The main character kind of looks like Rambo.
He does look like Rambo, yeah, you're not wrong. I think it was on the Mega Drive as well. It was an arcade game. But I don't think it wasn't on the Super Nintendo. The only console I think it was on, that I can remember at least, was the Mega Drive.
Oh, wow. Yeah, as I say, I can see, did it predate Contra?
Oh, I'm not sure. Possibly. They would have been round about the same time. It might have done.
1989.
Was it 89? Okay. So, yeah, they were around about the same time.
Contra was 1987. So
Contra came first.
Yeah, they do look similar games, but obviously that's the one you played on your Commodore 64. It's it's those memories, isn't it?
It is indeed. And like I say, obviously I played Contra, but as Probotector as it was called over here. But you know what it's like, you go around your cousin's house, you play a game for 10 minutes, you go home. You know, when you've got something at home that you play all the time, that's the one you remember, isn't it, you know?
It's yours. Yeah. Did that ever come to the Wii Virtual Console?
I don't believe so. In fact, the only other way I know of playing it, and I know because I own it, is that it's one of... Do you know the Evercade that's come out recently?
Yeah.
It's on the Data East collection for the Evercade, which is the only other way I know of playing it. So I bought it. I basically bought an Evercade for that one game.
Nice. But people do tend to just buy a console just for one game, don't they?
Yeah, certainly did back in the day.
I'm sure you'll make other discoveries on that.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Nice, good pick. By the looks of it anyway. So my number 10 pick is Wonder Boy 3, The Dragon's Trap.
Yep.
I had that on the Game Gear as a child. Now, up until, was it last year or the year before, the Wonder Boy 4 or Monster World 4 remake came to Switch and I reviewed it for you.
Yeah.
Up until that point, this Wonder Boy 3 was the only Wonder Boy game I'd ever played.
Oh, okay.
From that series.
Yep.
And then I played the collection. I reviewed the collection for you recently, didn't I?
Yes.
Which this game wasn't on that, which was annoying. But so basically, this game, it was like one Christmas. My brother and I got like 4 Game Gear games and a present, and this was one of them. And I'd never had any experience with a Metroidvania style game, and it's not really a Metroidvania, but it's sort of a Metroidvania light, like a 2D action adventure. You can go off in different directions, but you need to get a certain animal transformation to be able to get to certain areas.
Yes, yeah.
And it's not a long game. It's not a difficult game, really, especially if you know what you're doing. But it's one of those where back then it had a password system rather than a save system. And I remember the memories of this game when I would go on a Wednesday evening, I would go to Cubs. And my brother was 3 years older than me, so he'd go to Scouts. So when Cubs ended, my mum would bring Stephen to do Scouts, and she'd take me home, and then there was like an hour he'd be there, and then we'd have to go and pick him up. And in that hour, for quite a lot of weeks in a row, I made it sort of a tradition that I would put the Game Gear on, Wonder Boy 3, start from the very beginning and just see how far I could get in that hour.
Oh yeah.
And I sort of made that sort of like a challenge to myself, and I had such a great time with the game with that. And it got a really good remake on the Switch in its launch year. And my only gripe with that is it was just too faithful a remake to the fact that I actually beat it quite quickly. But then that's not the game's fault, is it? But and I sort of just felt very jealous of people that were able to play it for the first time there. But I really loved it, and I worked everything out myself as well. I didn't need to look anything up, although back then you couldn't really look things up easily. Yeah. But it's just one of them. It felt like a real achievement to beat that game.
Do you know, it's funny, a game that's not on my list, but it could have been actually, which sounds quite similar in some respects, and I did a similar sort of thing of kind of figuring it out for myself, was Gargoyle's Quest on the Game Boy.
Oh, I've heard of that, yeah.
Yeah, really good game, and again, kind of not really a Metroidvania. I guess it's more like an ARPG in some respects, but just that feeling of having no idea what to do and then starting to figure it out to the point where you could then fly through the early parts of it and keep attempting to get further each time, you know?
Yeah, it's a sequel on the NES app.
Yes, it was on the Wii U app. I don't know if it's on the
NES.
Oh,
that's where I saw it. Yeah.
And then the third game was Demon's Crest on the SNES.
Oh, I've heard of that one. Yeah.
Yeah, it's that sort of same series, and they're linked to the Ghost and Goblins series.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, when these games came out, the term Metroidvania wasn't a thing, was it?
No, absolutely.
I mean, Metroid existed, but it wasn't really a genre at that point.
That's it. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All right, so what's your number 9 pick then?
Very similar to my number 10 pick, actually. These were my 2 favourite games as a kid, and this one's called Sly Spy.
Okay. I'll be honest, when I read your list,
yeah,
I first thought you were talking about Sly Cooper.
Oh, no.
I was like...
You'd like this game, though, because it's very heavily based on James Bond, like...
Yeah, I'm noticing the screenshots.
Yeah, like stupidly heavily based on it, to the point where they probably should have got sued. But it's a run and gun, but this time nothing like Contra. It's more like Rolling Thunder, a game called Rolling Thunder, if you know that one.
I've heard of it. Yeah.
Yeah, similar to that in terms of its mechanics. You play as a secret agent, and you kind of make your way through the levels. Again, obviously, just shooting everything that's in your way, but again, I just remember as a kid, I don't even know if I'd really seen any James Bond films by that point, but just by osmosis, you know who James Bond is, and you know Jaws, and you know Odd Job and people like that, and there are bosses in this game that are blatant rip-offs of those characters, and I just remember like me and my cousins making up almost like our own James Bond films based on the levels as we were playing and stuff like that.
Nice.
And it's just...
Yeah, I'm watching gameplay of it. It looks awesome.
It's great. And the arcade version of it is on the Switch. You can buy it on the Switch. So I don't know how much it is. £5-6, I suppose. Definitely worth getting. Like, I think you'd enjoy it just because of that heavy James Bond influence. But obviously I played... I
will look this up.
Yeah, definitely. I played the Commodore version, which obviously looks far more primitive. But it was quite a faithful port, to be fair. And I loved it as a kid. Like I say, I had those 2 games and another one that didn't quite make the list called APB, which were kind of my 3 favourite Commodore games. And I'll always remember those games.
God, there's a level where he's shooting a shark underwater.
Yep. There's 2 underwater stages actually, but yeah, there's a fight with a big like Jaws-like character, like I said. And...
There's a bit where he's fighting a guy in a big yellow diving suit, and that's the exact diving suit one of the villains has in For Your Eyes Only.
Yeah, it is trust me, it's such a rip-off. The very first part of the game, Dave, you start up and it says, welcome agent, and then you have to put in your 3-digit secret agent code name. Do you know what I mean? Like,
everyone's going to put 007 there,
yeah, exactly, yeah. But no, it's a good game.
One of the weapons is called the golden gun.
The golden gun, yeah. You get the gold. You have to pick up the pieces of the golden gun, then you get like a special weapon for a few minutes.
Just like in the film, yeah.
Yeah, trust me, it's a great game though. It's worth have a look on the Switch. Have a look later.
That does look good. I will do, yeah. Because we're opening up new games to each other.
Yeah, exactly right.
Well, that's the last time you'll do that, because I have heard of all the other games on your list. So, okay, so my number 9 pick is, I mean, people that know the channel know we are big fans of Mario Kart, but shock horror, I haven't put a Mario Kart game on this list. It was one of the honourables, but just the series in general. But I've actually gone for, again, it's down to nostalgia, down to memories, Diddy Kong Racing.
Oh, yeah.
So when I was 10 or 11, when the N64 came out and I played it at a friend's, I played Diddy Kong Racing before Mario Kart 64, and we owned Diddy Kong Racing before Mario Kart 64 as well. And what I really loved about this game was, it has a proper single-player adventure mode, and because we'd had a lot of time with Mario 64, which was our first game, and Diddy Kong Racing was our second game, and although obviously there's the multiplayer racing, which we had a lot of fun with, it was that single player mode that felt like Mario 64, and the fact that you're on this island, you go to the different tracks and they're like levels, you're collecting these golden balloons to unlock new levels, and there's like doors with the number of balloons you need, just like Mario 64. And they really integrated, like WizPig had taken over the island, and you had to win all the races, then race against the boss, and then do a silver coin challenge on every race, where you had to find 8 hidden silver coins on each level, then win the race.
Right.
And then there was like this battle mode, which was not just shooting each other, but also like ones where you're having to collect enough eggs before everyone else, and things like that. And there was just so much more to this game that by the time I played Mario Kart 64, as much as I loved Mario Kart 64, it felt like a not as good version of Diddy Kong Racing.
Yeah.
Because Mario Kart 64 did for its time especially, did the multiplayer racing very, very well, but it just didn't have the single player side that Diddy Kong Racing had.
Yeah, I remember, because I played Mario Kart first. I bought that on launch day. And it's funny because I remember at the time Mario Kart 64, whilst it was praised, it scored very well, lots of people criticised it for its battle mode, which they said wasn't as good as the Super Nintendo version. And then when Diddy Kong Racing came out, a lot of people criticised, in hindsight, the fact that it didn't innovate as much as games that then came out did. But despite all that, Mario Kart 64 is still quite revered, isn't it? Even though it seems to get criticised either way back in the day, you know?
Yeah, I feel like Mario Kart 64 is revered by people that played it back in the day. I think newcomers now, because obviously the mechanics are quite dated, it's hard to go back to.
Yeah.
If you have that know-how of the game going into it now, it's still fun to play, but I can understand younger people not gravitating to it. But I feel like Diddy Kong Racing will still be liked by younger people playing it for the first time today.
Yeah.
I feel like it's aged better.
Yeah, I did play Diddy Kong back in the day, and I also played another N64 racer with South Park characters in, Kart Racer. Do you remember that one?
Oh, South Park Rally.
That was it. And as much as I liked those two games, and Diddy Kong Racing is objectively probably the best out of the three, I'd played so much of Mario Kart by then that I'd kind of had enough of kart racers. Do you know what I mean?
Oh yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
But yeah, definitely.
And another thing, I suppose, that sort of keeps Diddy Kong Racing high up for me, again from that nostalgia, that memory thing, is the fact that it's never been re-released since.
No.
And obviously there's the whole licensing issues, because obviously Banjo and Conquer are in there, owned by Rare Microsoft now. but because they did a remake of it on the DS, which replaced Banjo and Conker with Dixie Kong and Tiny Kong, but I personally did not like that remake. They made a lot of changes to it and sort of gimmicky touchscreen stuff that just ruined the game for me. And but it never got a virtual console release or a even though some games like Donkey Kong 64 did, and now Banjo-Kazooie is on the N64 app. We know Rare games aren't off the table, so maybe we could see a resurgence of this game. But I feel like I've said this before in a previous podcast, that I'm wondering if the reason they haven't is because there's a character in it called Taj, who's like the blue elephant, the genie, and they might not want to re-release this game because his voice could cause controversy without getting political here.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah, I understand what you mean.
Yeah,
right.
But so maybe if because they don't touch up the games at all for virtual console releases, they just release them as is.
Right.
So, and on the DS version, they had a completely different voice for him.
Okay.
So, so maybe just mute him or put different voice on him. Maybe could fix that, but I don't think they would bother with that. So they're just rather just not release it. Yeah. But I might be wrong, but that's just a theory I've got.
Okay, yeah, no, that's potentially the reason. Who knows? But I can understand where you're coming from. That might be why. Yeah.
It's a shame because it's such a great concept for a game that I know Crash Team Racing had a adventure mode as well, but it wasn't the same. So you didn't have like a proper explorable one island, whereas Crash Bandicoot's Crash Team Racing's hub worlds were sort of like different sections that you went from one to the other,
right?
Rather than it feeling like a living, breathing island. So and it's all there's a lot of mystery to it when you're playing through it as well, and things to discover. That sort of thing. Like you unlocked one character, the drumstick, the turkey, who when you got a certain part through the game, one of the frogs that you can run over and squish them, by the way.
Right.
One of them suddenly has like a chicken crest, and then you run it over, and then suddenly you've unlocked this character.
Oh, okay.
Like, how do you know to do that? Right. Yeah. So anyway, let's go on to your number 8.
Okay. My number 8 then is the only PC game, maybe kind of, certainly the only exclusive PC game on here, and that's Championship Manager. For the 1997-98 season. Now, I've played Championship Manager or Football Manager as it kind of evolved into pretty much every year since. But this was the first one I ever played. I played it around a friend's house, a school friend's house, and there were a bunch of us around his house one day, and this was when PCs weren't. Not everyone had one. I certainly didn't have one right then. I got one soon after, but my mate did. And he was an only child. He had more stuff than the rest of us, if you know what I mean. And he had this game, and we all played it. We picked a team each, and we played a few, a season or a bit of a season around his house. And it was just every time we went around his house again, we picked up this save file and played again. And it was one of the most fun experiences I can remember. I know it's the sort of game that won't appeal to everyone, and some people will think it's so boring. It's basically, like a spreadsheet simulator. I get told a lot, but just in terms of having an interest in football, and just having this shared experience with your mates, where you're all picking a team, and then you're playing through, and when you're playing each other's teams, and the winners and losers, and the stick that you gave each other, and we'd print off our stats. My mate would print off each of our stats, and we'd take them into school, and we'd look at our teams and who we wanted to buy in the transfer windows and stuff. It was just such a good. It opened my eyes to a type of game I never even knew existed, and never even knew I cared about until I played it. And it was just such an important game for me for so many reasons.
Yeah, so obviously I'm not. I can watch football fine, but I don't follow it like you do. But the whole manager thing, so obviously my sport, if you want to call it that, is wrestling, and the SmackDown versus Raw games would have a general manager mode, and my friend and I would lose ourselves in that. I can understand that sort of mode being addictive. My brother, who does follow football, he said back in the day he would be at a friend's house overnight and be playing like the manager sims, and then the next thing they know, it's 3 a.m.
It's ridiculous how much time you could lose to those games, you know.
But it's interesting you went for 97, 98, because on the topic of football, it's not on my list, but the FIFA games, FIFA 98 is my favourite, and it was the same year.
Yeah, it is strange. I don't know whether there was just an upturn in the quality of games at that time, or they started to get a handle on it, or what. But it's odd because that season in real life was a terrible season for my team. Like, we were awful that season. we nearly got relegated. Whereas, you know,
really?
as you mentioned earlier, obviously Arsenal being our rivals, they won the league. So it's a sort of season that I don't even want to think about ever again. But in that game, you know, it was great, and obviously you could change history as well. So that didn't happen in the game, you know.
For me, FIFA 98 was all about the indoor stadium.
Yeah, that was a great mode. Road to World Cup.
Why did they not do that anymore?
I know. It's odd. They got it. That game was really good, and then they made World Cup 98. Obviously, you know, kind of the official endorsed game for the World Cup, which was also great. And then FIFA 99 2000, it's just started to fall away a bit, and you had like ISS started to pick up and become possibly the superior game of the two.
Yeah.
But over the years, FIFA, you know, whether you love it or hate it, has definitely become the number one choice again, hasn't it? You know.
Well, until EA Sports FC comes around.
That's very true. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens with that. Yeah.
Okay, so that was your number 8 pick. So my number 8 pick is Resident Evil 4, which is something we talked about last year at our Halloween discussion, wasn't it?
Yes, yeah, we did, yeah.
Went through all the Resi games. So Resident Evil 4, for me, I mentioned at the beginning, I did my little joke about the different kinds of Resi games, and I know you're mentioning Resident Evil a bit later as well. So I was never into Resident Evil 4 before, because what was the word? I tried it. I had Resident Evil 2 on the N64, and I got away into it, but I couldn't get on with the fixed camera angles or the controls. Obviously, it's acquired taste, I'd say. But when Resident Evil 4 came out, and I just saw the camera was over the shoulder, and I watched a video of it that came with a magazine, because YouTube didn't exist then.
Yeah.
This was the only way you could see game footage before games came out. And I watched it. It was like the opening area, and I thought, wow, this looks pretty fun. And then I didn't buy it straight away, but I waited for it I bought it pre-owned, so it was £10 less at the time. And I played it, and I really liked it. And then I had a friend who didn't like Resident Evil or hadn't played them or anything, and I showed it to him, and he fell in love with it as well and immediately bought his own copy. And we spent this whole weekend just playing through this game together. And basically, when he got home and had his own copy, and he had to play catch up with me, like he played it a lot more than I did, so he could catch up, but he'd already seen how to get past certain bits. And he'd be on the phone to me, and then we would come back together, and we would sort of compare notes as how far we got to each other. And sometimes I'd go to his, and he needed me to help him with a certain bit. So although we'd ended up playing through the rest of the game separately, we were at the same time playing it together, because we just had this swapping stories. And that, again, it might not be the best Resident Evil game or everyone's favourite, but it's that experience that sets it really high in my mind.
Yeah, I see, I didn't play 4 straight away. I remember, because I was a Resident Evil fan, and I remember seeing screenshots of 4 in what I assume it would have been Nintendo magazine, official Nintendo magazine, whatever it was called.
Yeah.
I'm guessing it was. I can't remember. But anyway, it was like an early build of Resi 4, which it never came to be. It was like a ghost house. Totally
I remember you saying before.
Yeah. But then I kind of drifted out of gaming between seeing those screenshots and the game releasing. And then obviously when I did get round to 4, it was a completely different game. But I actually got back into gaming. One of the reasons was due to Resident Evil, because I bought a Gamecube with the remake, the Resi remake, bundled in, and I basically bought the Gamecube for that game. But I didn't actually play Resi 4, albeit that was on the Gamecube, until it came out on the Wii. It was re-released on the Wii, wasn't it?
Oh yeah. And one thing about talking about the Resident Evil remake is the Resident Evil 4 actually wanted me to see more of the series, so I got that GameCube remake as well.
Yeah.
And also Resident Evil 2 and 3 and Code Veronica were ported. And so I played through all of them, and the only one I didn't beat was 0 because I couldn't really get on with that one. But I ended up enjoying the games with the fixed camera angles, and I did have to look up solutions to the puzzles, but other than that, I still enjoyed the experience.
Yeah, I love the Resident Evil series. I really do. You know, to this day, the story's very convoluted these days, but you know, even so, it's just a great series. Very, very nostalgic for that series.
Yeah, definitely. And we'll talk about Resident Evil a bit later on your list, I'm noticing. So,
yes, yeah.
So should we move on to your number 7?
Yes, my number 7 then. This was I was going to put a fighting game on, and it was kind of between two franchises, and I went in the end for Mortal Kombat, and specifically Mortal Kombat 2, and the other franchise was of course Street Fighter, but that doesn't appear on the list and is an honourable mention for sure. But Mortal Kombat 2, I played this game to death when I was young, because my cousin lent me a copy of the game for the Super Nintendo. I played it in the arcades as well briefly, but more so on the Super Nintendo. And he lent me a copy of the game with a strategy guide with all of the characters' moves in. And I say lent me, like this, he was older than me, my cousin, you know, a fair bit older. And he kind of left it at my house and then just left it there for months. So you effectively had the game for that. Do you know what I mean? Like, it wasn't like a couple of weeks and you had to give it back. And I read that strategy guide, you know, like night after night, day after day. I knew every move. I could perform every move. I could complete the game quite easily with most characters. I mean, I try now, Mortal Kombat 2. I'm terrible at it. I can't get anywhere. It's so hard. But back then, I could complete it quite easily. I could unlock the characters, you know, the secret characters. Who was it? Jade, Noob Saibot, and Smoke, I think it was. Oh, man. I put so much time into that game. And I love the series still to this day because of Mortal Kombat 2, really. I'd played the first one before, but it was 2 that got me hooked. And I still look forward to the games now. You know, we've had 11 being the most recent one. I like what they did with the reboot and how they've continued the story on since that reboot. Again, it's got a bit convoluted again. It doesn't take long, even when they reboot things, for it to get a bit confusing again. But I love the Mortal Kombat games.
Yeah, so I remember when I was young, because I didn't have any 16-bit console.
Yeah.
I went from the NES to the N64, so I didn't really have any exposure to Mortal Kombat at home. I did remember watching Games Master. Used to have that game a lot in the competitions, and they'd always, whoever won always managed to pull off the fatality, but obviously someone else had come and typed it in for them or something.
Yeah.
And they just showed the footage of, just because you want to see that. And I remember seeing that thinking, oh, this looks really cool, because you're young, you're like 7 or 8 years old, and you see all this over the top blood, and that's all cool, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I remember I must have been on holiday or something, and they have, the arcades you have on holidays. Because I didn't really go to arcades much. Basically, the 1 week of the year where we went to a holiday camp or something, that was the only time I got to experience arcade machines.
Yeah.
So I'd have to wait a year to make more progress in the Simpsons arcade game and things like that. But I remember 1 year seeing Mortal Kombat 2, the arcade machine there, and I remember it might have been 2, but I picked Raiden. And I remember I had my, however much it was, put it in, her Raiden, and then the computer, I was against the computer, but the computer just annihilated me.
Yeah.
And then did a stage fatality, knocking me into the acid in the background. And I turned into a skeleton, and I was like, what?
Yeah, it is. Mortal Kombat 2 is one of the hardest games I've ever played. Like, the Shao Kahn is an absolute joke. Like, he's so cheap. And I remember playing it on there was an Xbox 360 compilation of the free arcade games
years
trilogy,
later.
Yeah. And I remember I beat all 3 games, and it took, like, I was stressed, mate. I was swearing at the screen, like, it annoyed me. But I completed all 3 games, I got all the achievements, and there was a bug, and one of the achievements didn't unlock. And because...
Oh, no.
Yeah, because one of them didn't unlock, the last one, which was unlock all the achievements or whatever it was, didn't unlock. And I was raging, no. Mate. I was like, it almost spoiled my love for Mortal Kombat, do you know what I mean? Like...
Oh, the same thing happened to me in Sonic All-Stars Racing on the Xbox.
Oh, really?
Like, there's one of the achievements to unlock everything, but one of the shopping achievements, there's a bug that happens to a lot of people where it doesn't unlock, and then you can't. It's a missable achievement, so you can't get it after that.
Yeah.
So it's annoying. But don't you have the arcade machine of this?
I have the arcade 1-up machine. Yes. I've just upgraded it, actually. I had the one that had Mortal Kombat 1, 2 and 3 on it, or 3 Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3. But I've bought the Legacy edition, which also has a lot of the other Midway games on. It has Rampage on it as well, which is another game I love. Nice. Yeah, so Rampage isn't on this list. Could have easily could have been. Love Rampage as well. But yeah, so I do have that.
We'll get to the honourables.
Yeah, they keep coming to me as I'm talking, you know.
Yeah. Okay, so my number 7 is I gotta put Sonic on the list. I was a huge fan. I've actually got a good big pile of Sonic the Comic sitting next to me from my childhood. So I've been looking through them, nostalgia, you know. So I've gone with Sonic the Hedgehog 2, which I know it's a very, very common one to be people's favourite Sonic game, but when I was young and I had this friend at school who was a huge Sonic fan, and I went over his house a few times and he introduced me to the Mega Drive and the Sonic games. And Sonic the Hedgehog 2, it was only the first 2 were out at that point. And the second one, obviously, I preferred because it was 2-player, which meant I got to play rather than just watch him play.
Oh, right, yeah.
And obviously, you play as Tails, you just follow Sonic. And you don't... Back then, it didn't really notice that Tails is pretty... Well, if you're playing as Tails, you're not really playing, because you just keep getting left behind. But there was a competitive mode to this as well, which I'll get to in a bit. But what I really like, despite the fact that I never owned this game and never sort of grew up with it, I still played it at friends. My brother had a friend who'd bring his Mega Drive over with Sonic 2 as well, so I did get to play it quite a bit, and I knew all the zones and things like that, and it was really the other media that really got me into this game more, because like I said, there's the comics that sort of loosely follow the stories of the games. I had this book called Where's Sonic, which is like a Where's Wally thing, and it was all based on Sonic 2's levels as well.
Oh, right.
There were so many books and things like that were based on the games, and I really grew attached to the world of Sonic the Hedgehog 2 through that.
Yeah.
And basically this friend as well, he left during... year 3, so I haven't seen him since I was 8, but I remember he was so obsessed with Sonic, and I got really into Sonic as well back then, so you'd think me and him would be like the best of friends, wouldn't you? Although we weren't enemies or anything, we were still friends. We weren't best of friends because I was it was one of those competitive fan things, you know?
Right.
I'm the better Sonic fan than you sort of thing, and so it's sort of, I can't, obviously now I wouldn't be like that, but when you're like 7 years old, whatever,
right.
It's, you do, don't you?
Yeah.
The fact that he had the Mega Drive when I had the Game Gear meant it was a flawless victory for him, to quote Mortal Kombat there. And I just had this jealousy. Rather than just like being nice to him because he could bring the Sonic stuff to me, I was just jealous that he had it in the first place. And so when we got the Sonic Mega Collection on the Gamecube, that was the first time I'd owned those Sonic games, the first time I played Sonic 3 and a few of the others beyond that. But the multiplayer on Sonic 2, the competitive one, where you choose, like, there's like 3 zones available and the special zone to do it on. It's split screen, Sonic versus Tails, but it's not just a race to the end. It ranks you on, like, best time is one of the points. It's also who got the highest score, who broke the most item boxes, who got the most rings, and who got the most total rings, so including ones you've lost. And so obviously coming first in the time is usually to your detriment, because the other one can then just go exploring the level to get all the other scores up, and then win that way. And my brother and I played that so much back in the day. We were teenagers by this point, and even to this day we still play that. Like, it's on the Mega Drive app and we play it online together, and it still holds up. I absolutely love that multiplayer mode. So yeah, it's just Sonic 2 is the Sonic game for me. Sorry to talk a long time about that.
It's alright. Yeah, I don't have a big history with Sonic, to be honest. Like, when I had the Commodore, like I said earlier, my cousin, different cousin, had a Mega Drive, so obviously a big jump up, and they had one of the Sonic games, possibly both, but I remember seeing at least one of the Sonic games and being blown away, because I obviously was used to the Commodore graphics and stuff. But when I played it, I could never quite get the hang of the speed element, because you have like level 1, the classic, is it Green Hill? Is it Green Hill Zone?
Yeah.
That first level.
Yeah.
Really does do a good job of showing you the speed, and you have the loops and whatnot. And then you get to level 2, and you have to be so much slower. And I don't think Sonic controls very well when he's slow. And I always found that quite
the marble
off-putting.
zone.
Yeah, whichever one it is. I apologise. I don't know the game as well as you, but I just found that quite jarring. And I play it now and I enjoy it more than I did back then. But I always found that quite awkward, that you had some levels that were clearly designed with that speed element in mind, and others that weren't. Yet Sonic's control didn't seem to match both.
Yeah, I found with Sonic 1 it did do that, but Sonic 2's levels I think are more catered. Like, there's a lot more ramps, and you can do the spin dash, which lets you shoot off, because the speed is all about the momentum. You don't just speed off straight away, you have to build momentum first. And really getting through the levels quickly is your reward for being able to keep the momentum going.
Oh, okay.
And that's the way I look at it anyway. But, so the other thing I was going to say about Sonic 2 is, one of my brother's friend that would bring his Mega Drive, he showed us the level select sheet, which is how we managed to see all the later levels so often. And I remember I asked him what the last level was called, and he said it's called the Death Egg Zone. And the reason it's called that is because you're going to die when you play that. And I'm like, well, that's just what Robotnik calls his the ship, the Death Egg. That's not why it's called that. It's a pun on the Death Star, isn't it? But,
okay, yeah.
But I remember the final boss of that game, we never beat it as a child. I never saw it. So then I hadn't played the game for like 7 years or so till we got the Mega Collection. So in all those years, and it's going back on what we were saying earlier about how, in my day, things were better because of lack of technology, all that. And it's like, so I always imagined, how do you beat that when Robotnik's in that giant robot? What do you do? And what's the ending like? And I was imagining it and coming up with things in my head. But nowadays I could just look that up, and then it's like that's what it is before you've even had a chance to think about it. So that whole element of mystery sort of keeps the fact that I didn't own the game or didn't get to see everything about it. It's like, yeah, definitely.
It does. It's very hard to imagine these days, isn't it? But without the internet and access to the answers to everything as you seem to have these days, it was completely different.
Yeah. So anyway, sorry I was going on a long tangent there, but let's get on to your next one. So your number 6 pick now.
Yeah, my number 6 then is Super Mario 64, which is a game that, maybe more so than any other on the list, I'd have to give it some serious thought, but was probably the one that made my jaw drop when I first played it. It's not my favourite on the list, as you can see by the fact it's at number 6, of course, but in terms of putting it on for the first time and seeing or experiencing a type of gameplay I'd never not just never seen before, but didn't even really think was possible. Like you just didn't even imagine you could have that much freedom in a game. And again, like you just said about back in the day, and I know that sounds silly these days. I know, obviously open world games, sandbox games, but back then, all you have to do is compare the previous Mario game, being Super Mario World on the Super Nintendo, to Super Mario 64, just to see the stark difference between the two. And I'm not talking about quality, because I think they're both great games, but just in terms of what you could do and how you experienced it. It blew my mind, and I don't say that lightly. It blew my mind playing that for the first time.
Okay, you know what? The first time I played this game was New Year's Eve, 1998, I think.
Right.
And because we bought our N64 that day, and I remember my mum setting it up, and like that night, and it was a night we did a nighttime session on it. And the thing is, and yeah, I had that. We spent so long looking for the first level in that game, by the way. And I remember, I don't know what it was, but there was a smell of deodorant. I don't know if my brother had put deodorant on or something, or there was just a smell of it.
Right.
And whenever I smell this particular deodorant at any point in my life since, it brings me back to that night.
Yeah, it's funny how that happens, isn't it?
And you know how smells can bring back memories.
Yeah.
And it was such a magical night that was, just seeing that game. I'd seen clips on the TV, but it just didn't compare, because when you're watching clips on the TV, like, you see that quite often they show off like Mario jumping on the Koopa shell and then him knocking out the Koopas while sliding on it, but it was always from that camera angle.
Yeah.
But the fact that you could move the camera yourself, that wasn't shown in the adverts.
And it wasn't just that. It wasn't. You could watch the adverts and you could see the screenshots and whatnot, but it still doesn't prepare you for the fact that you are literally dumped in front of the palace and just told, "Go on then, off you go." You're not put in a level. Yeah. I'd never known that before. Yeah,
and you go into the Bob-on Battlefield and you've got to. It's like I didn't realise when my brother went up the mountain that he was going up, because I thought he was just going round in circles there, but the fact that you were actually, because it was such a gradual slope, it seemed like, and the whole 3D space, I wasn't too good with it at that time.
Yeah.
And it's just and this game in general as well, I think, has been kept so relevant for the speedrunning scene as well.
Yeah.
Because I love watching speedruns of this game. People have broken this game to no end. There's so many different tricks you can do.
Yeah. And
just to cut a few seconds off here and there, and it's just so great seeing the best Mario 64 players just show how much there is in this game that you can sort of get into, like.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not a game I play a lot now. I know you play it quite a lot still. I know you've played it on your channel and whatnot. I play it, every so often, but it's more just, it almost changed the landscape of gaming for me at the age I was. I don't think I could ever experience that again. I don't see what a game could do to make me feel like that again, Yeah, it's one of them as well where, especially to the sort of like younger viewers as well, that you just had to be there to get it. Yeah. I mean, I suppose that the biggest leap since that I can think of anyways is kind of the virtual reality headsets and things that have come out, because that is, again, that's a whole new way of playing. It's a whole new experience, isn't it? But going from that 2D plane into a 3D living, breathing world, which is how it felt back then, it was awe-inspiring. It was unbelievable. Oh yeah, definitely. Great pick. So that one, it could have made it onto my list, that one as well, but there's a different Mario game I'm putting above that. Right. It's a close call though, very close call. So my number 6 game is so this is one that does change since then. It's I'm putting Super Smash Bros. Ultimate on there, but really how my top 10 list has changed over the years, it's just whatever the newest Smash game is. Right. Because it's one of those, I suppose, if I was to really go into the whole nostalgia memories, probably Melee would be the one I have the most nostalgia for. Was that the Gamecube one? My first Gamecube game. Yeah. Gamecube one, and it was one of them where there was still like so many like characters not there that you kind of wanted, and you still imagine
And that, imagine, oh, what if Sonic was in this? What if so-and-so was in this? And then there'd be rumours, because obviously the internet couldn't debunk things by then so easily. So there were still rumours that Sonic and Tails are unlockable in it and things like that, that you'd believe and sort of try and find. But really, from a gameplay point of view, I think Smash Ultimate is the best Smash. And obviously, a lot of it is due to not just the game, because if it came to just the gameplay, I could have put any of them on here interchangeably, but it's really the outside of the game, sort of like the hype leading up to it, the community, and I've talked to you about this in a video upcoming on your channel as well, so if you want to know my thoughts on Ultimate a bit more. But it is just that whole speculation, which character's going to get in, everyone making their lists, and then you see the reveal trailers, and Nintendo or Sakurai knew how to reveal these characters right, to sort of maybe tease us, like fake us out on certain things. And it's just that whole thought of bringing a community together online like that, to unite in who's it gonna be, who's that, like, oh my god, it's Sora sort of thing, like, it's just that whole experience outside of the game is what sort of escalated Ultimate up there for me.
Yeah, it's funny with Smash Brothers, because it does have like a level of showmanship to it that's nothing to do with the actual game. It's, as you say, the reveal of extra characters and whatnot. That I don't really. There aren't many other series that have that. Not for such a prolonged period of time, at least. After release.
I think because the window for it, like the sort of like because it's obviously it started off with just Nintendo characters, and if it had stayed as just Nintendo characters, then maybe the hypes for it wouldn't have been as vast. But because from Brawl onwards they brought in Snake and Sonic, then Cloud from Final Fantasy, so really anyone could get in from any game franchise. Right, yeah. And I think that brought non-Nintendo fans into it. And then when Steve from Minecraft got in there, Twitter broke down, like literally, like crashed, because everyone was on Twitter about it, like they couldn't cope with it. So it's just, and it's just the fact, I think if it had stayed at just Nintendo characters, it wouldn't have had the same impact. But the fact that it just cast the net wider really just brought all of gaming into it. Yeah, I can see that. So, your number 5.
My number 5 then it was quite. I had 2 in mind, both in the same franchise, so I was trying to adhere to your one per franchise rule. I ultimately went for The Legend of Zelda: Link's Awakening, but it was very close. I had A Link to the Past kind of was on there at one point, and I really can't decide still which one of those two is my favourite. I think it is just Link's Awakening, because I played it first.
Yeah, fair enough.
But either of those two could have made the list. But
you never forget your first.
No, that's it. I love the Zelda franchise, as many people do, but I am very much, a fan of the top-down games. Things like Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask I've played and enjoyed, and the one since Ocarina of Time very much so, to be fair. But I don't know, there's something, when they moved into 3D, although they gained many things, they just lost something for me as well. And I will always enjoy or prefer the top-down, old-school Zelda games. And Link's Awakening is a strange one, because it's very different to any other Zelda game. It's very quirky. It has a very different sense of humour to the other games. I think the fact it's not set in Hyrule helps it, because it can kind of just detach itself from the lore and from, a lot of baggage, and just be its own thing. And I like that element to it. I remember taking it on car journeys, and playing it in the car, and it was the first, big game in terms of how long it could take you to finish that I remember playing. And again, it was just a different experience. I'd played for the most part, kind of arcadey type games until then, where you die, get game over after 5-10 minutes and start again. I hadn't really played a game like Zelda before. I had played the first one on the NES, but again, it was around a cousin's house. You don't really play it properly. You don't really get anywhere before you have to go home. So this was my first experience with a game like that, you know?
Oh yeah. So when I first played Link's Awakening, it was so when you say Link's Awakening, are you meaning all versions of it, or just the Game Boy one or the Switch one, or?
Yeah, I mean, I'm talking about the Game Boy one, I think, because that's the one that has the most nostalgia. But I mean, the DX version and the recent remake are both great games too.
Yeah. So I was going to talk about the Game Boy one as well, but because that's the one I was shown as a kid. I didn't play it much, but all he showed me was stealing stuff from the shop.
Yeah.
That's pretty much all I knew about the game until I played the DX one on the 3DS Virtual Console.
Right. Yep.
And I was saying to you another time as well, like I love it on the Switch as well. But again, it's sort of like back in the day, the shortcomings of it, like we were talking about the lack of buttons, which meant the item management was difficult. Back then, you don't know that though, do you?
No,
that's all you know is how this game is, and it doesn't bother you.
Exactly.
You know. So yeah, and also I do love sort of like you're saying about, you know, the fact it's in a different world and stuff, and the fact is I will make comparisons here. So this to Link to the Past is pretty much what Majora's Mask was to Ocarina of Time.
Right, yep.
Where it was like a follow-up with the same Link from the previous game, and it was set in an alternate world, and it had... although Majora's Mask goes hard with the darker elements of it, but Majora's Mask still had a sense of humour to it as well, more so than Ocarina of Time, whereas this one also had a bigger sense of humour than Link to the Past, but also had some darker elements to it as well.
Yeah.
In the fact that you're waking up the Windfish, and it's sort of like Link's dreaming, isn't he?
Yeah.
And there's sort of characters that say, oh, if you wake up the Windfish, we won't exist anymore, and things like that.
Yeah, it definitely.
And it's like, so it's sort of like, and then I remember playing this on the Switch, and you especially get attached to what's her name, Marion, yeah, and but then oh god, she's gonna die though if you beat the game, like.
Yeah, I mean, I remember two things about it in particular, or two things that stuck out to me at the time at least. One is the opening cutscene where Link's on his ship and there's like the thunder and lightning, and then it crashes, and then it kind of pans up from him on the island, and you see the egg in the background. Because obviously, again, like the Game Boy games I'd been playing at the time didn't really even have an opening cutscene. You know, you kind of just had the flash, you know, the main menu, and then you press start and you started. And it was just so different. And then there is a scene in it where you're sitting on the beach talking to Marin about halfway through the game. You know, I won't say any more than that. But again, just for a Game Boy game, you didn't have things like that. You know what I mean? Like, such a high level of storytelling that I was used to.
Oh yeah, definitely. Again, because I came into that game later on, so you know I'd seen stuff like that before, but I can understand that, you know, being as impactful as it was.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's definitely impressive. Definitely for a Game Boy game, especially impressive game.
Yeah,
that they got, and then so let's move on to my number 5, and that is a game called Perfect Dark.
Oh, okay.
So, some people might say... Actually, I'll mention this later on, actually. So, Perfect Dark is a spiritual successor to GoldenEye.
Yep.
So, because basically, Rare made GoldenEye, had the James Bond license, but I think they lost the James Bond license after that, so they couldn't do another James Bond game. So, they took what they created with GoldenEye and made a brand new franchise, brand new character with it. And this game was Perfect Dark, and it was just such a refined version of GoldenEye, really, where you could do all sorts of different things. Like, you had guns that had different functions. You could do multiplayer with bots as well. There was actual voice acting. It was just all sort of they pushed the N64 to the limit, to the fact that you needed the expansion pack to actually play the game fully. You could only do sort of like the challenge mode if you didn't have the expansion pack.
Yeah.
And the reason this one sort of goes high for me, because I don't play a lot of first person shooters, but I do enjoy the ones I play. But I feel like back then, the ones, and the one I'll mention later as well, I just love the fact that the level isn't just simply run and gun, kind of like Call of Duty tends to be, and then sort of just you're forced into an in-game cutscene stuff. It was the fact that a lot of the levels were sort of espionage based,
right?
And you had objectives to do, and you had to explore the levels and work out for yourself how to do these objectives. And when you played on a harder difficulty, there'd be extra missions to do, which sort of made you get to know these levels and the layouts really well, and the stealth gameplay was really good as well. This one introduced the fact that you could knock out people and it wouldn't count as you killing them.
Yeah.
Whereas Goldeneye, if you knocked a scientist out, it counts as you killing them. So there was a way you could get scientists and civilians out of your way without killing them, so that was always good. And I just remember this one summer, it must have been 2000 or something like that, the year the game came out. I had this friend who had the game as well, and he would come over, I would go over to his, and we'd play it multiplayer a lot. We'd play through the single player a lot, helping each other out, and he sort of taught me how to do it on the harder difficulties as well. And this game also got a remake on the Xbox 360, and it's not like oh no, what have they done, they've changed it completely. No, it was the exact same game, but they upped the graphics, they kept it looking like an N64 game, and it still looked new and up to date, and the performance was great and all that, and they added dual analog controls. So really the Xbox 360 version is the superior version of the game.
Oh, okay.
But obviously the N64 version is the one I played, the one I have all the memories of. So either version counts for this list. But just Perfect Dark, what a game.
Yeah. I played it back in the day, Perfect Dark, and very much enjoyed it. It's funny because I don't have any that I can think of first-person shooters on my list, unless I'm missing something that's on there that I can't think of at the minute. But I have loads of... No, I didn't think I did. But I've got loads of honourable mentions, so that I think they just sit just below like that top tier for me. But obviously the N64 had a couple of very good ones, and Perfect Dark was definitely one of those.
Oh yeah. Right, number 4.
My number 4 is... Let me just get my list up. Excuse me.
Another PC game, I believe.
Yes,
unless you played it on something else.
Yeah, well, my number 4 is Theme Park, and earlier I said I only had one PC game, then had to rethink that, because I did play this on the PC, but I played it more on the Super Nintendo and the DS, actually. I had the DS version. It
did come to DS, didn't it?
Yeah, and I put a stupid amount of hours in on the DS. Really, found my love for it there, and I really did love this game, and things like Theme Hospital as well, but Park was always my favourite.
Yeah, I did have this game on the PC as well when I was young, and I absolutely loved it as well. Every time I played it, though, I always started again, because I just loved the building up from scratch.
Yeah. I mean, the first time I played it was on the Super Nintendo. My friend had it, and it was just so different to anything else, really.
I've never seen anything like this.
No, exactly. The only thing I can think of, and it's nothing like it, don't get me wrong, I had a game called Megalomania, from Sensible Software, which it's not it's not a simulation game really at all. It's more an RTS, but just in terms of having like a world, like the same sort of view and the small people and stuff, it was the only thing I'd seen that was similar. Do you know what I mean? Albeit it was a completely different game. But then my friend brought it round, and it was like, wow, what is this? And we he used to come around fairly often, and we'd play it together and stuff, and try and complete each park and sell it on and buy the next plot of land. But then, like I say, it came to the DS, and I kind of bought it. I was like, yeah, I used to like that game, I'll pick this up. And it just having it on that system, it was like a game changer. It suited that system so well that I put tens of hundreds of hours into it.
Yeah, I also loved that you could go on the rides, and it'll be like a little video of like your first person view of the ride.
Yeah.
And I love that when you're on the roller coaster, you got your dog there riding the carriage with you.
Yeah, it's just things like, things that everyone knows now, like you used to put extra salt on your chips and then put a Coke stand next to it so people would buy a drink. Put extra ice in it to water it down, all those things. But again, just back then, it was just so different. And like you used to do negotiations over like a plate of biscuits or something, and you had to agree before the biscuits run out, and you had to like your hands move towards each other to shake hands to agree on a deal and stuff.
I remember there was sort of like the silhouettes of the two guys, wasn't it?
That's right. Yeah. Just such a fun game, such a great game.
Yeah. And with like you mentioned Theme Hospital, obviously they did a 2 Point Hospital, which was like a spiritual successor to that, I'd say.
Yes, they did.
And they got 2 Point Campus coming out very soon. So do you think they'll do 2 Point Theme Park next?
I'd love them to do something, theme park based, to be honest. Maybe.
Have you played the Roller Coaster Tycoon games?
I played Roller Coaster Tycoon 3 on the Switch because I reviewed it for our channel. But they weren't ones that I played much back in the day, I must say, no.
I'll tell you what, because there are other theme park simulators, obviously more advanced ones on the PC.
Yeah.
But I don't know if you know a channel called Let's Game It Out.
No, I don't know that one, sorry.
Okay, I mean, obviously, it's not really sort of advertised. This guy's got millions of subscribers. Right. He's very well known. But what he does is he plays these sorts of simulator games.
Yep.
On the PC, and what he does is he'll make like really ridiculous theme parks, like the stupidest things you can do. Like he'll have like these really long paths that all these people have to go along, and they get springed in the air and things like that.
Right.
And then he does an edited down video of them, and he just commentates what he did, and it's just honestly, I've been crying laughing watching some of them. Like, so honestly, Let's Game It Out, I recommend you watch that channel.
Okay,
I'll give it a watch. Funny.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
So you can sort of see how in depth you can go with modern theme park games as well.
Oh, okay, yeah. Oh, good. Yeah, I'll have a look.
So, little shout out to a channel I like there. Cool. So my number 4 pick then is we just talked about Zelda, didn't we? So let's talk about Zelda again.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go with the first Zelda game I ever played, and that is The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time.
Yeah.
Which was my brother's Christmas present in 1998.
It rings a bell, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, maybe it was 97 New Year's Eve. I got the N64 then.
Right.
Yeah, it must have been. Yeah, so I absolutely love this game because it was the first time I'd ever played a Zelda game. It was the first time I'd ever played like an action adventure game, a 3D one anyway. And it's just... I loved the story and the settings of it. Seeing that Kokiri forest at the beginning, even now, and hearing the music and just exploring the world as a child, because obviously you become an adult in it, but it took us ages to actually get to that point in the game.
Yeah.
And I'm talking weeks. Obviously nowadays you'd have beaten the game in a week, wouldn't you? But,
yeah.
Just weeks of you've done the Gorum area, but how do you get to the Zora's one? How do you pick up the bombs? Like, you can't yet, and things like that just took ages to be able to get that far. So Link as a child in that, hearing the music from the market town or Kakariko village, those are just powerful memories for me.
Yeah.
And just finding my way around Hyrule. And it's just nothing can really top that for me. It's one of those, obviously Mario 64 came before that, and that did top it in the memories. But from an action adventure point of view, from a Zelda game, nothing can really top that.
It's funny because you mentioned the music in that game, and as I've just said, my favourite games in this series are the top-down games. But I can, even while you're talking, 3 different tunes from Ocarina of Time have come into my head. It's they just in there, aren't they? Just subconsciously, and they just return to you as soon as you start talking about it again.
And also, on the topic of like the 2D versus 3D, I'd say obviously the 3D Zelda sort of went really in their own direction after all. But I'd say, because this was the first 3D Zelda game, this feels like a 3D version of a 2D Zelda game in the way it's structured.
Yeah, I mean, the reason I prefer 2D Zelda games is, I mean, Ocarina of Time is a good example of why. I'm not knocking the game. I really do enjoy Ocarina, but
You better not be.
you know is it the water temple? You know, it's notorious.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah.
The infamous
I can't defend that.
Yeah, no, but it's not that I'm not even saying I don't like it, but I'm just saying that in terms of a dungeon, there's something about even the worst 2D Zelda dungeons I can enjoy, but sometimes when 3D ones that aren't as good really aren't very good. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's just something about
I know what you mean. Yeah, there's something unenjoyable about when you get to a dungeon you don't like.
Exactly. Whereas in a 2D one, you can get just as lost. You know, it can feel just as insurmountable, but it still feels better than the bad 3D ones, and that's kind of why I prefer the 2D top-down ones.
I found with 2D Zelda games that the dungeon maps are easier to read because they're just squares.
Yeah, exactly.
Rather than the complicated shapes. So you can just look at that map easily and go, oh, there's a door there, or there's a room there that I haven't accessed yet. That maybe that run leads to it. Whereas it's harder to do that on the 3D ones.
I agree with you. Yeah, and maybe that's what it is for me. But you know, that's a small gripe. Ocarina is still a great game. Yeah. Really, really good game.
Yeah. And I have for a long time been having a sort of a toss-up between this and Majora's Mask as my favourite as well, because Majora's Mask is a very different game, and it would be an honourable here. But obviously Ocarina, just because it was the first one I played, and you know, nothing can top your first one, can it?
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. I understand that, definitely.
Yeah. Right, so we're on to number 3 now.
Right, into the top 3, yeah. So my number 3 then is the only kind of traditional, I suppose, RPG on my list, and that's Chrono Trigger. And, you know, there'll be some people that watch this that, you know, practically screaming at the screen, you know, where's Final Fantasy VII? Where's this RPG? Where's that? I didn't play a lot of RPGs back in the day for 2 reasons, really. For one being that in England, on the Super Nintendo, a lot of the big ones didn't come out over here. They either stayed in Japan or they went to America, and that's it. And the second one was I didn't have a PlayStation, so I missed a lot of those ones too. But one that I did play, and I played it years later on the DS, I think it was, that it got a remake, or a re-release at least, was Chrono Trigger. And obviously by this point I'd heard lots about it. And when I finally got to play it for myself, you know, there are certain games that you play many years later, and we've said it ourselves during this, you know, I can see why, but blah, blah, blah. When I played Chrono Trigger, It wasn't any of that. It was just, this game's great. You know, like, to this day, this game is still great.
Oh, yeah. So the thing is, I've never played Chrono Trigger. I know I hear a lot about it. It's one of them sort of, for me, it just feels like one of those games like Mother 3 and things like that. People just want it to come out again, but it never does. Is there a reason why it isn't coming out again?
Not that I know of. I'm quite surprised it hasn't.
The demand is there.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the games that have come out over the years, being re-released, even recently, you've had Chrono Cross, of course, has been re-released, and
is that part of the same series?
It's a sequel, yeah. It's quite a tenuous sequel, I think, from what I've heard. I did buy it actually recently. I imported it on the Switch, but I've not got around to playing it yet. But I honestly can't see a reason why it hasn't been re-released. To be perfectly honest,
there's no licensing.
No, I don't think so.
With it.
No, I mean, you know, it's a Square Enix property. It's not based on a license or anything. It's their characters. I don't see why they can't. It's very odd, but it's a great game.
Weird that they do Chrono Cross when obviously maybe that is a bigger game, whatever. But I hear about Chrono Trigger all the time, but I'd never heard of Chrono Cross before.
Yeah,
like
I mean, Chrono Trigger is an absolute classic. It's the storytelling is fantastic. The characters are great. The battle system, which is kind of like action, turn-based but action-based at the same time almost, you know. You have like a bar that builds up and then you can have another turn. The range in terms of where you visit and the time periods that you go to and how it all ties together again, it's just, you know, it's amazing to think it was a 16-bit game. And it does make me quite sad that these games didn't come out over here back then. You know, things like Final Fantasy VI and stuff we never got. And it, you know,
oh yeah,
although you can play them now quite freely and quite easily, you know, playing them back then would have been amazing, you know?
Yeah, because I say I'm not an RPG guy myself. Obviously, there's none on this list. Mostly because they're big time sinks, aren't they? We talked about Xenoblade earlier. I've never beaten a Xenoblade game just because and I'm not going to get the third one because I know I'll never beat it.
Yeah.
But I always enjoy the beginnings of RPGs. I'll say that. But maybe if I had access to these Final Fantasies and Chrono Trigger back in the day, maybe I would be a big RPG guy now.
Yeah, I mean that's how I feel, because I remember hearing a lot about them for like magazines I used to buy back then, but just not having access to them. And I do feel that, yeah, like you've just said, almost like my window for playing RPGs has passed, because, you know, now with kids and stuff, it's just you haven't got the time to play them properly. And
you need shorter games.
Yeah, you do, exactly right. And I do wish that I'd had the opportunity to play a lot of these, you know, back then. But it is what it is. But this is one that I did play, albeit later on, but still at a point where I could dedicate time to it. And it's a great game, really good game.
But saying that though, I'm like on Clubhouse games on the Switch. I've put probably over 100 hours into that, and probably about 80 of those hours is on Spider Solitaire, because I'm just something I'm just absent-mindedly playing while watching something.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, I could have beaten Xenoblade Chronicles in that time.
But the thing is, that's the difference though, isn't it? That you can play something absent-mindedly whilst doing something else.
True.
You can pick it up for 5 minutes at a time. Even if you pick it up for 80 hours worth of 5 minutes, it's not the same as having to dedicate 80 hours to something to keep track of what's going on and understand it properly.
That's
and stuff.
True, yeah.
You know?
Oh, and it is that fact that I remember when I picked up Xenoblade Chronicles on the Wii again after so long, I actually had to go on YouTube and watch a compilation of all the cutscenes up to the point I could remember, because I've forgotten everything.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I've heard an idea that games should now come out with an in your 30s mode.
Right, okay.
Where it will say to you, like if the game notices you haven't played a game in a couple of months, it will give you a text box saying, would you like a rundown of the controls and the story so far?
Yeah.
So that it'll remind us.
Yeah, I'm surprised that more games don't kind of do the, you know, like one of the Pokemon games did it. I think it might have been Leaf Green, where when you every time you turned it back on, it just showed you the last like 5 actions you did or something like that, you know?
Oh, nice.
I think it was Leaf Green. It might not have been, but there was one of them that did that. Just give you a quick, brief recap of the last few things that you did. So if you hadn't played it for ages, you could get back up to speed.
Yeah. Needs to happen.
Yeah.
Okay, so on to my number 3. And, okay, so I was saying earlier that some people might say I've broken my rule of one per franchise here, but this is not the same franchise. And it's GoldenEye 007 on the N64.
Yeah.
It's not the same franchise as Perfect Dark is a spiritual successor, but it's not the same franchise. So there. So GoldenEye, I've talked a lot about GoldenEye in a podcast with Jeffrey a few weeks ago. And so go to that if you want to hear my extensive thoughts. But as you know, I'm a huge James Bond fan. This game is the reason why I'm a huge James Bond fan.
Yeah.
It's one of them. I talked earlier about Perfect Dark. Like, it's the type of shooter that I prefer, where it's espionage, it's stealth, it's objectives to work out how to do. And it's one of those games that has been rumoured to be getting, or leaked, that it's got a remake that's due to come out, but it's just not been announced yet.
Right.
But, and it's one of them where I streamed the N64 game a few months ago. Personally, I think it still holds up gameplay-wise, but there are aspects where, because if this just came as it is N64 to the N64 app, for example, I don't think that would be good enough, because there's two aspects where this game hasn't held up, and that's the graphics and the controls.
Right.
A perfect Dark style remake would fix those two things, and it would be just as good today. So I'd love to see that come back, but I'm not explaining why this is one of my favourite games, am I? So again, it is the time it came out. This was the first person shooter I'd ever seen, I'd ever played. I didn't own it for a few years because we borrowed it so many times, and I knew the game inside and out before we'd even owned it. And the multiplayer was just a last minute addition apparently, but it was just god tier at the time.
Yeah.
And my brother and I just played that so much. And again, I didn't even know Goldeneye was a film back then. Right. I knew James Bond was a film character. I just thought this was a game of that character. But when I saw the film, that just turned me into a huge Bond fan. And just there was so much in this game, so many in-jokes, so many things people made about this game, like Natalia and how annoying she was, and like that hidden island and the dam level, things like that, the man on the toilet in the facility level. There's just I've talked about this game honestly for about 2 hours with that other podcast, so I really don't know how to dilute that down here, but yeah, just this game's just amazing. I absolutely love it.
Yeah, I again, like I said to you earlier, at that point I'd seen very few James Bond films, maybe not even any, I don't remember, but when this game came out, again, it wasn't me that owned it originally, it was a friend of mine. We kind of, we tried to buy different games from each other so we could swap, and he bought this one, and it was such a good game. Like that first level, I remember like it does the cinematic like pan across, and then it sweeps down to James Bond, and then it goes behind him and then kind of into him so that you get the first person view. And you mentioned there the man on the toilet in the second level, and just so many moments picking up, trying to find the oh dear me, the bodysuits, whatever you call it, bulletproof armor, things like that. Body armor, thank you, and things like that, and the multiplayer, just such an iconic game based on a film that had come out a few years before. It was quite strange how why Rare picked that game, and it was odd, but it just worked.
When it was the same year Tomorrow Never Dies came out, so why didn't they? Normally people would just make Tomorrow Never Dies at that time, but
it was weird, but it just worked. Everything came together and it just worked. And it was just so oh god, I can't go into this, I'll never stop. That was proven in the other podcast, but let's move on to your one. Okay.
Number 2 for Glen.
Number 2, right. So my second choice is a franchise we've already mentioned, being Resident Evil, and my favourite is Resident Evil 2. Now, I mentioned the remake earlier, which, did enter my head as the one that I wanted to choose, but I can't look past that second game for so many reasons. I remember buying it. I played it on the N64. Like I said, I didn't have a PlayStation, so I didn't play it the way it originally, was intended to be played. But I remember buying it on my way home. I used to work in Sainsbury's, which is a supermarket over here. And on my way home, there was a video game shop opened up, and they had this in there for quite cheap, actually. And I'd wanted to play it. I wanted to play the Resident Evil games, and I'd played a bit of the first one around a friend's house. And I picked this up, and I played it that night. And I've never had such contrasting emotions, because my first emotion was, how the sodding hell do you control this game? Like, what is going on? Because I just kept walking into the fire the whole time on the first screen, like literally the first screen of the game. But then I got used to it a bit more, and made it to the police station, and there's a jump scare in there that got me. And then it got me again, and I actually stopped playing. I was like, no, I must be tired. I need to come back to this with fresh eyes tomorrow. And over the next few nights, played it and loved it, like absolutely loved it. And when this came out, which I think was around 98, I might be wrong, zombies hadn't... it was about that. Zombies hadn't become like the all encapsulating, like popular culture icons that they are now. And they were still quite... you'd had your zombie films in the past, a lot of which were revolved around voodoo, and then you had things like Night of the Living Dead that kind of changed it into the flesh eaters that we know of today in popular culture. And this game series really, hooked into that sort of zombie, and it was quite terrifying at the time. It was. I know the acting was appalling, and the voice acting was has become a bit of a joke these days and stuff, but it didn't matter. Just the atmosphere and the general gameplay was so gripping, and those fixed camera angles, as much as they were a pain at times, they did really add to the atmosphere.
Yeah, I mean, just to see an N64 game with proper voice acting in general wasn't every day, was it?
No, it's surprising. I mean, it's a miracle, really, that they fit it on a cartridge, to be honest.
Oh, yeah. So I remember when we got this, again, as I said, I didn't play very far into it, but I remember I enjoyed watching my brother play this. I don't think he beat it either, but I remember him pointing out that it's Leon's first day on the job, and he's just murdering all his colleagues. Yeah.
It's oh man, I love this game, and I love the remake that they did. But it's great. It's absolutely great. But still, I do prefer the original, I think.
I did beat the remake.
Yes, yeah, I beat the remake.
So
yeah,
it's weird how we've picked obviously very different styles of Resident Evil games each, but they're both starring Leon.
Yeah, that is true. Leon's a cool character.
Him.
Yeah, he's cool.
He has a cool hair.
No, I just love this series. Like I said, when you picked 4, I like.
Yeah.
I do like where it's gone since. Obviously the actiony ones, and obviously now it's first person. I thoroughly enjoy all of them. Well, 6 maybe not so much, but I really
still need
do.
To play 6.
Yeah, I need to finish. It's the only one I've never finished, but I really do love the fixed camera, old school one's the best.
Yeah. Nice. I've got a number 2 pick, haven't I? So that is my my Mario game, isn't it? Number 2.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So Mario 64 was close for it, but I've just I've got to go with Mario 3 on the NES.
Right. Yeah.
So the first NES game I played was the first Super Mario Brothers. We had a cartridge that had that, Tetris, and Nintendo World Cup on it.
Okay. Yep.
So obviously I was really into Mario then, and had played Mario 2, the Doki Doki Panic one, which was obviously very different, and I knew that game. But when we played Mario 3, that felt like another proper Mario game.
Yeah.
And just because obviously I was like 5 or something when I played this game for the first time, and when you're that young and you see something that's such a big step up from the first game, and you see all these different styles of worlds, the fact that you can fly in this one, and obviously the different music as well, and the fact that there's text on the screen in the levels of like the toad houses and things like that just made it feel like such a much bigger game than the first one.
Yeah. And
it's one that my brother and I again just played a lot in co-op back then, and we even been playing it on the Switch Online as well.
Right.
Mario versus Luigi, really, because you take it in turns to do the levels, but if you on the map screen go over where the previous player finished the level, they can press A to get you into a Mario Brothers arcade style mini game.
Oh, okay. Right.
And if you beat them there, you steal their go.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, we did that a lot, and yeah, it's just all the power ups in this one. You had things like, I find in the sort of like the newer Mario games as well, if there's a new power up, it's just there front and center, kind of like how the Tanuki was here, the Raccoon Mario. But you had like the frog suit and the Hammer Brothers suit especially, which was, there was only like 3 times in the game you could get there, and there was never in any of the marketing. But nowadays Nintendo would overuse it, really, so there's never any new power-ups that feel special.
Yeah.
That feel like you earned it, stuff like that. But back then, that Hammer Bros suit was like this thing you had to get and had to keep, and it was, if you lost it, it was heartbreaking. And just so many great worlds in this as well. It was like the ice world, there was the giant world, especially that giant world, man. Like, yeah, there's just so much to this game. The explorable maps as well, which was a big step up again for the series. It was just really, again, it might not be objectively the best Mario game. I know a lot of people choose World over this, but it's the one I played when I was young. It's the one I grew up with. It's just the one that I have the most powerful nostalgia for.
Yeah.
So that's why it's so high up on my list.
Yeah, I have, again, kind of a different experience of it because I didn't have an NES, and the first time I knew of this game was in that film The Wizard.
Oh yeah.
Do you remember?
I was introduced to The Wizard because it had Mario 3 in it, and I'd already played Mario 3.
Oh no, so I just saw it on like Sky Movies one day and saw the Mario game in it. But the first time I played Mario 3 was actually on Super Mario All-Stars.
Oh yeah.
So I played that before I ever played the NES version of it, the actual original version. But I do remember things like the warp whistles and the getting the P-wing from Peach, and being able to fly across the whole level and stuff, and holding down on like the white blocks, and then you could fall behind the scenery, and that's how you got to certain secret stages and stuff. Just these little things that I remember from that game. But just playing that All-Stars compilation, because I'd played a lot of the first Mario Brothers on the NES, because again my cousin had it, but I hadn't played any of the others. They didn't own any of the others, so when I got All-Stars, I kind of knew of the first game, and then I played the second game and was like, wow, this is completely different. Obviously I didn't know anything about the backstory behind it at that time. And then played 3, which felt more traditional again, but felt so much more polished. And it does, like, it did, as classic as the first game is, 3 just it felt like such a step up in so many ways, didn't it?
Oh yeah, definitely. And yeah, there was just so much to it, and again, it's just to think a game like that got on an NES cartridge as well.
Yeah, exactly.
When you compare it to the other Mario games, especially, like, loved that game. Obviously, my second favourite game of all time, apparently. Okay, what's your number one then?
Right. Well, my number one game, and I don't think this will ever change. I can't see anything ever overtaking it. Is Turtles in Time, which is a game that I played on the Super Nintendo, but obviously it was an arcade game as well. I never played it in the arcades. I played the first game, TMNT, the arcade game, in the arcades, and then obviously played this on the Super Nintendo. And I was such a big Turtles fan. I say was, still am, to be fair. And this game was just everything you could ever want, from a Turtles game. It got the humour right. It obviously the beat 'em up side, the beat 'em up mechanics were spot on. Playing it in multiplayer, I only ever played it in 2-player, obviously on the Super Nintendo, but I can imagine 4-player in the arcades would have been great as well.
Must have been, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. The Super Nintendo version and the arcade version were actually very different. They had a few differences between them. The throwing the enemies at the screen mechanic was implemented into a boss fight with Shredder in the Super Nintendo version. It wasn't in the arcade. There was a fight in one of the levels, boss fight, where in the arcade you fought Tokar and Razor, and in the Super Nintendo version you fought Bebop and Rocksteady. There were quite a few differences, actually. The Rat King was a boss in the Super Nintendo version, to the point where they do feel like quite different games. And when there was a remake of Turtles in Time on the Xbox a few years ago, I don't think you can, it's been taken down now, but it was based on the arcade version, and it got a lot of grief. I mean, some of it was deserved. It was, it was a bit of an ugly game, to be fair. It didn't look great, but a lot of people thought they'd left stuff out, and it wasn't they'd left stuff out. It was that they'd ported or remade, if you like, the arcade version, and it shows just how well loved the Super Nintendo version was, that most people didn't actually know much about the arcade version. They knew more about that Super Nintendo version of it,
Yeah. So I've not actually played this. I've only played the Xbox remake that you mentioned just now.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was fun to play and all that, but obviously I knew the backlash about it before I played it, so I knew I wasn't playing the proper version. But I will say, when I proposed this discussion to you, top 10, I kind of knew that this or Resident Evil 2 would be your number one. Yeah, because I know actually, and obviously we got the Cowabunga collection coming out very soon, haven't we?
Yeah, it's not too far away now, and I think that actually has both versions on it, just to prove the point of how different they are.
Yeah, and the Mega Drive had Hyperstone Heist, was it? Was that the same game or?
No, it was. I haven't played that one, but I know a little bit about it, and it was similar in some ways, but there were a few differences. It had like what was his name in the first Turtles film? Was it Tatsu? You remember, like, Shredder's right-hand man?
Oh, I can't remember.
I think his name was Tatsu. But anyway, he was a boss in Hyperstone Heist, and there were a few other little bits and bobs, that were different. But it was basically the same sort of thing.
So when we were saying about, obviously, if it's, like, objectively the best game or just sort of your favourite, would you say, obviously, bias aside, would you say Shredder's Revenge, how would that rank with the Turtles games?
Well, Shredder's Revenge is very heavily inspired by Turtles in Time. A lot of the mechanics, you can see that in its mechanics. Yeah, I mean, Shredder's Revenge is probably a better game, objectively a better game.
Yeah.
But we were talking earlier, weren't we, about how it's not just about playing the game, it's about when you played it and whatnot.
Oh,
and
yeah.
As much as you can play a better game these days, you don't have the situation that goes around with it, and the hype around the Turtles at the time that Turtles in Time came out was huge. It's hard to I don't know what I could compare it to these days. The Turtle Mania, as it was called, it was massive, and
yeah.
All that feeds into why things are your favourite, and for that reason, Turtles in Time I don't think will ever be topped.
Yeah, it's like there's like a child's point of view of something is just so powerful, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah, and it helps that it's still a great game. Don't get me wrong, but yeah, even if a better game comes along, as it's been proved recently, it just doesn't have everything else to go with it to top the list.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that's sort of, I say, the difference between what's objectively the best or what's your favourite. They're two very different questions, aren't they?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Right, so I'm going to go with what's objectively the best game of all time now, I suppose. So I've made no secret. I've said this quite a lot of times. I've streamed the whole thing on the channel when it came to the Switch. My favourite game of all time is Banjo-Kazooie.
Okay, yeah.
So, this was my 12th birthday present, and my birthdays have all been rubbish since then, it seems, because nothing could top this for me. So, basically, the whole sort of the hype towards Banjo-Kazooie coming out, although obviously it was a very anticipated game at the time, it wasn't really I wasn't like super duper excited about it and all that, but the thing is, Banjo, the character, was put in Diddy Kong Racing as sort of a way to promote the character before the game came out. And so so despite my beliefs at the time, this wasn't a spin-off from Diddy Kong Racing. It was just he made a cameo in that game.
Yeah.
But I was like, that's the character from Diddy Kong Racing in this game. That's cool. They're going to do more characters. They obviously did Conquer as well after, but so this was obviously, and at the time as well, Mario 64 was, as we've talked a lot about that. Obviously,
yeah.
3D platformer craze was beginning at that point, and 3D collectathons in general is my favourite genre. Obviously, the N64 had quite a few of them, but this one is the one that really topped it for me, because it had that it was the first game to sort of do the buddy duo character that a lot of platformers have done since. Like, he had the bear, he had a bird in his backpack, which originally was starting off as him sort of having something mechanical in his backpack, like legs that will sprout out and things like that, but then they decided to make it an actual living thing.
Right.
So they did the bear and bird. Obviously you have things like ukulele and things like that that have carried that sort of thing on. You had sort of like you had sort of very simplistic plot, a Snow White style plot of the witch kidnaps Banjo's sister to steal her looks because she's the fairest one of all, whatever.
Right.
So Banjo goes to go to save them. But what this game does is each world has 10 jiggies to collect. And whereas Mario 64, we talked about this another time, haven't we? Where you would go into the world, get the star, you'd come out the world, then go back in, the mission changes. Banjo did things differently where you went into the world, you got the jiggy, and then you stayed in the world. Like, so you could do... Obviously, Mario let you do this as well, and where you could sort of get them in any order as well. You also had the notes, which was like this game's coins, and collecting the notes let you open the doors to access different areas of the hub world, and the jiggies were used to unlock the actual worlds themselves. Now, there's a thing about the notes here, which I always said the Xbox 360 version of this game improved or fixed, where if you collected a certain amount of notes and then died and then restarted the level, you had to collect all the notes again, and the game would save your best note score, and that's what counted towards opening the doors. Now, the reason they did that was because the N64's memory couldn't handle saving the notes being collected permanently.
Oh, okay, right.
So it was one of them where people say it isn't, whereas the Xbox 360, once you've got the notes, you've got it forever. You don't have to collect it again. So really, it's one of these things where the N64 created a challenge just out of a limitation there.
Yeah.
Just a little side thing. But I just remember I had played this game before at a friend's house, and just briefly, but just playing this on my birthday that morning and sort of throughout the day. It was a Saturday as well, which is obviously a great time to have your birthday. And just playing these first worlds and just sort of exploring them. And obviously they were so populated, so many sort of characters that needed a quest done for a jiggy and things like that. Yeah. And yeah, it's just, oh man, I can't really go into how, without ranting for a long time about how great this game is. But there was so much humour as well to it. There was the gobbledygook they spoke to give you an idea of what their voices were like. The music, the varied worlds as well. The fact that one character was a camel that you kept beating up to get jiggies from him, which was barbaric but awesome. And even when you go to the darker horror world, it still seemed so vibrant. It was just something about this game that I keep on saying bring it to Switch, but I'm annoyed because it's on the Switch, and so I can't complain about it not being on Switch anymore. So yeah. And it ended with a game show. Like, the final boss was a game show, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean,
sorry, I went on for a while.
That's all right. Yeah, I mean, Rare were just bang on it back then, weren't they? This was, such a prolific period. I didn't play a lot of Banjo-Kazooie back then, but I played the one you mentioned a minute ago, which was Conker's Bad Fur Day from them.
Oh yeah,
which was just mental. Like, because I remember the screenshots of Conker when it was like in development, and it was this little cheery, happy squirrel, and then they turned it into this absolute like crazy, like aimed at adults but still quite cute platformer. And it's just weird, just Rare were just, everything they touched turned to gold back then, didn't it?
Oh yeah. And I always say, obviously big Nintendo fan, but Nintendo make a lot of blunders over the years, as any company does. But I think Nintendo's biggest mistake was not buying Rare when they had the chance, and then Microsoft got them. And why they chose not to buy the rest of the stake in Rare, I do not know. Because when I hear about, I was listening to a Did You Know Gaming earlier about cancelled Nintendo games, and a lot of them were Rare's ones for the GameCube and stuff, and I just felt so sad that we never got like Donkey Kong Racing and obviously probably more Banjo games, because a lot of the Rare's developers left the company after Microsoft got them, you know, and obviously like Free Radical, who made the Time Splitters games, were Rare employees, and the company that make Ukulele, they're the Banjo guys, you know. So it's sad that Nintendo didn't keep Rare.
Well, it was weird because generally when you buy a company, you buy their IPs as well, but a lot of Rare's best games were made using Nintendo's IPs, so you know Microsoft were never going to get that. And as you say, you can buy a company, but you can't stop the staff from leaving. So it was just a very strange deal all round. I mean, don't get me wrong, I know Rare had existed way before that as Ultimate Play, the game they were before that, but none of those IPs that they had back then had been utilised by Microsoft since that I can think of. Maybe a couple, but it was just a strange deal. Just a very strange deal, wasn't it?
Yeah, because I know Perfect Dark Zero was on the Xbox, but that was meant to be on GameCube.
Right.
So that wasn't obviously a new thing they did for Xbox, and they did a Banjo game Nuts and Bolts. But that I didn't enjoy it. It's not a bad game, but it is a bad Banjo game.
Okay.
If it was like brand new characters, then I don't think there'd be backlash on it.
Right.
But and then they were planning a sequel to Conker's Bad Fur Day, called Conker's Other Bad Day or something like that.
Right.
But Microsoft didn't want a sequel to that game, so they scrapped it.
It's odd.
And it's like, instead they did a remake of Conker's Bad Fur Days.
Yeah.
I don't know. It makes me really sad to think of everything we've missed out on, like all these sequels and brand new IPs they could have brought, and sometimes even like games like Grabbed by the Ghoulies and Cameo, like that came out on the Xbox from Rare. They would have performed so much better on a Nintendo console because they're just made for Nintendo fans.
Yeah.
Those sorts of cartoony games, you know?
Yeah, it's a deal that still doesn't make sense to this day, to be honest.
No. But, you know, they made the Kinect games, so that's something.
Exactly, yeah.
Man, what would they have done with the Wii remote? You know, you got to think of things like that. And...
Yeah. It is strange. It's weird what happened.
Yeah. But anyway, that's Banjo-Kazooie, my favourite game of all time.
Nice. Yeah, nice. Two very different lists.
Cool. Yes. So let's just prattle through a few honourable mentions I think he mentioned. So I'm just really quickly go through them. Go.
Okay.
Go.
I've got Killer Instinct, talking of Rare, actually. Rampage, that I mentioned earlier. Doom would be one of the first-person shooters that I was talking about earlier. Nice. Super Metroid, of course, fantastic game. You know, really could have made the list. APB, I mentioned earlier, again on the Commodore 64. Loved that game. Barbarian, International Karate, another one. Oh, so many games. Donkey Kong 94 on the Game Boy is what I meant to say. Great game. Yeah, just so many good games.
Oh yeah, Donkey Kong 94.
Yeah.
So for me, obviously I said sort of like any Mario Kart really, but I put Diddy Kong Racing instead. The first Paper Mario, Pokemon Blue, like just Gen 1 Pokemon.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a Gen 1, yes.
Yeah.
Mario Party 5. I didn't want to put too much Mario on there though.
Yeah.
I thought one's enough. And did I mention Conker's Bad Fur Day?
Yeah, well, we just said that, didn't we? That's a great game.
Yeah, we did, didn't we? Yeah, definitely. So, yeah, those were sort of like the closest runners-up, really. And Mega Man 3 as well.
Oh, yeah.
I know, I really like the classic Mega Man games, and 3's my favourite there.
Nice.
So, yeah, cool. So, before we finish up, should we move on to some viewer questions?
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So, Fatman and Pop asks, question for both of us.
Mm-hmm.
What is your favourite racing game from the past or present? Well, I sort of answered that in my top 10 list.
Yeah, I don't know if it's my favourite. I remember really enjoying Extreme G on the N64, which was like
I know that one.
yeah, it's like a futuristic motorbike racing game, wasn't it? Which was a lot of fun. So that would be up there. Whether it would be my favourite, I don't know. Ridge Racer, great game. Really enjoy Ridge Racer.
Ridge Racer.
But yeah, maybe one of those two, I would say.
Yeah. So for me, Diddy Kong Racing or just any Mario Kart, really. They're a good question. So I didn't actually say, when I put the community post up, I didn't say what our
The topic
podcast was going to be about.
Right,
so
yeah.
we might not have gotten questions like that when
Yeah.
if I said it was about our favourite games. So Chef Uru asks a few questions here.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know of a game that is very hard but still fun? You mentioned Mortal Kombat 2 before, didn't you?
Yeah, I mean, Mortal Kombat 2 is outrageously hard. Cuphead, very hard but fun game. Yeah, I mean...
Speaking of Cuphead, I don't know if I've ever mentioned this.
Yeah, what's that, Dave?
But I've beaten Cuphead.
I thought you might have done.
And I've beaten the DLC as well.
This I really enjoyed the DLC actually. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah,
But
brilliant.
That's a very good hard game.
The thing that escalates a hard game to be very fun as well is having this motivation to keep going. And what Cuphead does is when you fail, it gives you a progress bar showing how far you got.
Yeah.
And that's always enough to keep you going. I could get past that phase this time. I was so close.
Absolutely.
Whether that progress bar is accurate to how far you really got, I do not know. because it always seems to be right at the end of the phase. So
yeah, that's true. No, but you're right. It does. It just gives you that little kick to say, "Oh, go on then. I'll try again."
And also, fast loading screens is essential.
Because
Although Cuphead takes a while to load up the boss initially, when you retry, it's almost instant.
Yeah, that's a huge part of what makes it fun still.
Yeah. Chef Uru also asks, might be a follow-up to this, is there a game that made you want to throw your controller into the wall?
There's been loads. so many over the years.
Oh, yeah.
A Super Meat Boy was one in particular that really irritated me. Not because I didn't like it, just there just comes a point where the game's almost like broken you. Do you know what I mean? Like,
I think because it's a Twitch platformer, isn't it?
Yeah,
they sort of call that genre.
Yeah,
and again, that's another that works in a way that it's instant to load up again, but when you get your reward, really, because when you beat the level, you see all the failed attempts at the same time.
Exactly, yeah.
And that's sort of like your reward for persevering, I suppose.
Yeah, but Shao Kahn as well, I mentioned him earlier in Mortal Kombat. Yeah. Anytime you had to try and fight him, controllers were quivering, worried that they were going to be snapped in half.
Yeah, there's plenty of times in the past where I've never thrown a controller. I'll say that much. I know it's a regular story people have, but I've never done it myself. But I have punched the bed a lot.
Yeah, or screamed into a pillow or something.
Yeah, like you do. But I can't actually think of any examples right now, like what ones have been. As people know, I play a lot of hard games, but yeah, it's just I can't really think of any in particular that stand out.
Yeah, I mean,
even though I've had this question visible to me all day, and I've been thinking a lot, and I just can't really think.
My tolerance for difficult games has definitely waned over the years. I very much play games to have fun now, whereas in the past it would have been about challenging yourself, and I'm too old for that now, mate. It's just about having a bit of fun,
Yeah, I mean, I still like the difficult ones myself, just because I like that satisfaction.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Yeah.
Yeah. So third question, not related. Says one I've already answered. Do you have a favourite movie game?
It's difficult to think off the top of your head. The one that I can think of off the top of my head, again, not necessarily my favourite, but one that I did enjoy back in the day was Batman Returns on the Super Nintendo.
Ah, it's not the one I thought you'd say.
Which one were you thinking?
I thought you were going to say Aladdin.
Yeah, and again, that could definitely be the answer. Both are great games. Really, there was just something about 16-bit games. The chunky art style. The pixel art and stuff. It could easily be either of those. Both really good games.
They all hold up, don't they?
They really do. Yeah, they really do.
Even Batman Forever.
Oh, that was a pile of absolute. That was terrible, wasn't it? What an absolute travesty that game was.
Yeah. So for me, I've said it earlier, Goldeneye.
Yeah.
It's the one that made me a Bond fan, wasn't it?
Yeah.
If I was to go without that, even though I don't think it's that good a game, really, is the Lion King.
Yeah.
Just for that nostalgia, and obviously I love the film. The Game Gear Lion King was the one I had, but the 16-bit one I was always jealous of because it was that more powerful version of the game and the animations and that. But playing as that, it's one of them controller throwing games, I suppose.
Yeah,
and
it's very difficult.
When you hear that they made it hard on purpose just so people wouldn't just rent it for one weekend and beat it, just makes me annoyed.
Yeah, the vast majority of my games as a kid were licensed games, things like RoboCop.
Yeah.
You mentioned Lion King, Aladdin, so many of them that, Bart Simpson games, Hook. I seem to remember having Hook and playing that one a lot.
Oh, Hook, I've heard about that, yeah.
Yeah, just... they weren't great, but having an attachment to the source material just makes it more fun sometimes, doesn't it?
Yeah, but it is weird. I said to you before, I think, that we don't really see games based on films anymore.
It's
definitely, as the film comes out.
Yeah, no, it's definitely started to die out. It's not as big a thing as it used to be.
It was like every action film or every Disney film, whatever, always had a game as well, but they just don't anymore.
Yeah.
And it's like really just the Lego is the only thing that gets, or tie-ins with Minecraft or something is all you really get, isn't it?
Yeah,
Fortnite.
Yeah. It's not really. It was a huge part of the movie-going experience back then, waiting for the video game adaptation, But it's just different. But
do you think now maybe they can sell the costumes of Buzz Lightyear or Doctor Strange in Fortnite or Minecraft based on their new films coming out, and that's just cheaper for them to produce than to make a whole game, but they'll still get lots of money from that.
Yeah, quite possibly. And what they also do now that we've seen a few times over the years with games like Alien Isolation is they're quite happy to just create a game based on a well-known film, no matter how old the film is or the film franchise is, and just release it whenever, rather than having to tie into a new release of a film.
Yeah, and it's it's all the better for it, really.
Yeah, it is, because there's no pressure, there's no time limits, or not as strict a time limit, at least.
Oh yeah. Okay, so a good question. That got a good conversation out of that, didn't we? So we got two more questions, both from Water Music 34.
Okay.
Do you think that we will ever see any Metal Gear Solid games on the Switch?
I'm surprised there hasn't been a collection of some description. Not necessarily the newer games, but I'm surprised, like the GameCube era games or something like that. Or there was the one that came to the 3DS, wasn't there?
That was the Metal Gear Solid 3.
It was 3, wasn't it? I couldn't think which one it was.
Yeah.
I'm surprised we haven't...
I think the GameCube one was a remake of 2, was it?
Yeah, I believe so.
The first one, I don't know.
No, it wasn't 2, I don't think. I can't remember, but I'm surprised they haven't released something like that. Metal Gear, you just mentioned Metal Gear Solid 2. That was almost like a bloody operatic experience, just as much as it was a game in terms of how many cutscenes it had and things like that. I'm surprised something like that hasn't been ported or remastered in the years since to the Switch,
The Xbox 360 and PS3 got a collection of the first 3 games, I think.
Yeah.
So maybe just porting that to the Switch would be something, wouldn't it?
I would. That's what I would expect them to do. I wouldn't expect to see anything else. But yeah,
No.
we've not seen anything as it stands.
Okay, and finally, now Water Music asked this question last time you were on the podcast, but he posted it after we'd already recorded it.
Okay.
So I noticed he's been hanging on to this one. He wants to ask you whether you remember the time I got naked playing Wii Bowling.
Yeah. Yep, I I do remember that very well. You said it would happen if you got a perfect game. I don't know if you expected to get it in your head or whether it was just an outlandish comment that you made, but lo and behold, you did in fact then go on to get a perfect game.
2 days later.
Yeah, you ran out of the room cheering. We were all in the front room at uni, and you ran out of the room cheering, and then reappeared about 2 minutes later, absolutely starkers, which was very funny. Yeah, fair play to you. That was a lot of fun. It was a good time.
I'm a man of my word.
You
like
you most certainly are. Yeah, and it was that was very funny. I do remember that.
Right, okay. So that's the end of our viewer questions and the end of our podcast. We've kept it to below 2.25 hours. That's good, isn't it?
Yeah.
Have you enjoyed your time, Glen?
Yes, I love talking about things like this. It's nice to anything to do with older games. Just it's great to just reminisce and hear other people's stories. You know, because there's always a story attached to older games, isn't there? You know, so yeah, it's been really.
I love that sort of thing. Yeah,
it's great. So yeah, no, thank you for having me on. Really, really good.
Yeah, thank you for coming. You know, it's not so fun if I'm just sitting here talking to myself. So,
Exactly.
Yeah, so let us give a shout out to your channel.
Yeah, so I'm one half of SwitchUp Gaming, which is a Switch channel, of course, and we do reviews of games and conversational style videos. We've started to do a lot more of lately that seem to have gone down quite well, and they're really fun to do, similar to this really, and but on a shorter format. But yeah, so I'm sure Dave will put a link in there somewhere if you want to come and have a watch, and Dave will be appearing in a video very soon. It's a video that we've made, and we've got a few lined up to go out in the next week or so, but it's a video that I will be releasing soon, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing your reaction to it, Dave.
Oh yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I mean, I spoilers, I know what's on the discussion, but I look forward to seeing how you might have edited my words.
Maybe
make me say unthinkable things. Who knows?
Who knows? Yeah.
Well, I mean, I've got you to mention Arsenal earlier, and I think I've got the words "I love" somewhere. So I could do some editing myself.
No, that's naughty. You can't be doing that.
Anyway, thank you again, Glen, for joining, and
Cheers,
thank you to everyone who listened here. Let us know in the comments as well what your favourite games of all time are. It'll be interesting to see. So we'll see you in the next one.